All right, our first layer is completely cured and we're ready to do our first wave. Now, do you see how this is darker than this? It's because this was slightly raised on a fold on my the shower curtain that I have protecting my space right now. So it has cured not level, but I've flattened it out. So with the next couple layers, it will end up being just fine. But just so you know, you do need to make sure that your stuff is completely flat, and normally I do when I'm working with a canvas. These are a little bit harder just because they're smaller pieces. So I've got my resin all mixed according to the directions on the package. I have two other containers here. One is going to stay clear, and then one is going to be colored with the white pigment for our waves. And I don't need a ton, but I definitely want to make sure that I have enough and that I don't run out. And once again, I've got molds to the side if for any extra resin, I just pour them into the molds. All right, so for the white, I'm just using some Mix All White here. I'm just putting a couple drops in, and then we will mix it and check it. So when you're mixing liquids into your resin, as in acrylic paint, the whites for the waves and stuff like that, you want to make sure that what you add isn't more than 10% of the resin that is there, because otherwise your resin will not dry clear. And when it comes to whites, I never have to add that much. To know if you have enough, lift up your stir stick, and if it is completely opaque on that stir stick, you are good to go. If you can still see the color of your stir stick underneath, then you need to add a little bit more white pigment, but that is perfect. And then from our set here, I'm going to add this one to the watercolor. So I have in this set, there's 3 different bluey green colors that I'm going to be using for the water. Each one a little bit bluer or darker than the ones previous. This one is actually called Violet, but it's definitely got a blue-green tone to it. It probably color shifts to a violet color, but I've done these beach coasters in a color shift paint before and they looked absolutely beautiful. So I'm excited to see how this looks. And I'm not concerned with this being completely opaque because it's meant to be water. I want it to be translucent. I want to be able to see some of the sand color underneath there. So the only thing I'm concerned with is making sure that this is completely stirred up. I'm scraping all the sides and the bottom to make sure that I've got everything stirred up there. And there we go. So let's get this out of the way. I'm going to put a glove on. I shouldn't have to touch this, but at the off chance that I do have to touch it to move something or whatever, you can't do it with just your hands. You have to have protection on. So let's start with the blue. Now, first thing I'm going to do is do a wave line, like where I want my water to end-ish. It's going to be a little bit lower than that because we still have to add the water, or the white, and we still have to add the clear. Now let's do this one here. And as you can see, I tend to do both of the ones on each layer at the same time. All right, there we go. So I'm going to take my stir stick, move it around, just flatten it out. Just making sure that it's covered. And if it flows down the sides, that is perfect. It's going to start flowing down the sides when I use my heat gun anyway, simply because the heat is going to make it thinner and more runny, and it's just going to flow down the sides. And then last one. All right, I'm going to use my heat gun quickly just to remove any bubbles from the blue. And you definitely want to do this first before adding your clear or your white. It doesn't take very long. There we go. So now I'm going to take my clear and I'm just going to add a thin line right at the edge of that blue. And then the bottom one. And now a line of the white. And again, it's just going to be a little thin line. Often the thinness depends on how thick your resin is. And this particular resin, for me, it depends on how warm or how cool my house is. So I'm going to quickly just take out the bubbles just from that clear and that white. Now I'm going to put a narrower tip on my heat gun, and I'm going to hold my heat gun as horizontal as possible to the coasters, and I'm going to blow that white out on a high speed. If you feel you need to, you can go back and do it again. As much as you need to till it's completely blown out as much as you want. So typically when I do beach pieces, I'll add sand dollars and starfish and that sort of thing. For coasters, it doesn't really work though, because the texture of those things would make the coaster not smooth on the top. And then the other thing is I don't have anything that's the right scale for something this small. So I'm just gonna leave it. It's gonna look pretty just as it is. But I love how the color of that water, and I love seeing this poke through some of them. So I'll see you tomorrow. We'll do our next wave in the next color.